Good morning, everyone. Welcome and welcome back to Embodied Living with Christy. I am doing something a little bit different today while I record my podcast episode, and I am recording it as a video as well for YouTube in my fancy studio, which is my living room. I don't have any fancy equipment or anything like that, but that's okay. And those of you watching on video, I was going to spruce myself up a little bit more, and then I realized or remembered, because this is something I already know, the message and the energy is a lot more important than my appearance. That would purely be for maybe some of my own self-confidence and just maybe feeling a little bit more cute, but here we are. This is what's happening. This is how it's going down today. So I'm very excited to be here. It's been a while for the podcast. It's been, I didn't check for sure when my last episode was, but it's been at least a month, I think. I went really hard there with podcast episodes for a little while, and I was releasing a lot. I was doing a lot of my own inner work and exploration, and things were happening a lot there. So when that's going on, I have a lot more to share in terms of my own experiences, and a lot more downloads and things coming through that I can share via the podcast. I released 6 episodes all about returning within, finding that inner peace and tools and things that you can do to help yourself with that. And then, I don't know, who knows, maybe I burnt myself out a little bit. And it's been a while, but here we are again. I'm so very excited to be here because I have something to talk about today. I have a topic that I want to just kind of riff on and share with you guys. And this is something for myself that I have been exploring, something that came up a few weeks ago for me. And then this morning I saw a video by Phil Good on his YouTube, and he was talking about something very, very similar. And I loved that. It was just validation for me that the things that I was going through, number one, I wasn't alone. And number two, it's just nice to know that not that you're on the right track, but that, I don't even know the words to put to it. So we'll just dive in. I'm feeling a little bit awkward today, I think, because I haven't recorded in a while and haven't really, done a YouTube video in a while. I don't post a lot on YouTube anyway, but here we go. So a few weeks ago, I was, maybe even longer than that, but it doesn't really matter when. I was journaling, and I was getting more and more diligent with my own mindset and my own thoughts and emotions and just the human part of being here on earth in the physical. And something that I started using for myself, something that I started practicing, was anytime, because here's the thing. First of all, here's the thing. If you've been listening to the podcast, you know this already, but if you're new to the podcast, if you're new to my YouTube channel, I spent 2020 doing a lot of deep inner healing for myself. That's where my focus was. And so I've done a lot of that inner work. I've worked to heal, my wounds, to heal my inner child, and all of these things. I've done the things. I've done the work. I've identified the patterns and the habits and the mindsets and the things that I don't want to be in anymore. And so what I have been doing is, anytime one of those old patterns or those old thoughts or those old limiting beliefs or mindsets pop up into my mind, is I will just say to myself, old programming. And I'll just remind myself, okay, this is not who I want to be anymore. This is not the energy, the frequency that I want to embody anymore. And so I will remind myself over and over and over and over and over so many times, old programming. This is old programming. So you can look at yourself like a computer where, you need to clear out those old files and you need to clear out that old junk in order to upgrade your system or your software. Right? That's how I was thinking about it at that point. And this morning when I watched Phil's video, he was talking about this in a different way, but essentially the same thing. And, he was talking about being very, very, very diligent with those thoughts that pop up into your mind. And another way to think of them is like an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend where, they come back and they want you back. And, they're begging you and they're trying to get you to see that they've changed and that, no, it's okay. And it might look shiny and sparkly and wonderful, but it's still that old energy, right? So that was really interesting to me actually, because I had a dream about one of my terrible, awful old relationships, my old partner that was abusive to me. I had a dream about him a few nights ago, and so it of course, is in synchronicity that Phil put it that way in terms of your ex coming back, and not that has happened in the physical. But anyway, getting off track a little bit as I usually do. And so this is maybe something that you can consider practicing for yourself. So first of all, and again, if you guys have been listening to the podcast, you know that it's so important and necessary to identify where you have been functioning from. And what I mean by that is look at those patterns, look at those habits, the limiting beliefs, the mindsets, all of the things, right, that you have been living in, that those things that you have been being, identify those. And from there, then you can start to make change. You can start to choose new things, right? You can start to choose the beliefs you want to have. What feels more in resonance with you? What feels more aligned with your higher self? And then when you put that into practice, and it does take practice, it takes time, you are embodying your multidimensional self, your higher self, more and more and more every time you do that. Even every time you call yourself out and say to yourself, no, this is old programming. Like this is not where I'm functioning from anymore. Every time you do that, you upgrade your frequency a little bit more. Okay. And I talk about diligence because you have to be super diligent. You have to be on top of that shit. Okay. Like every single second of the day, because all that old stuff comes back in so easily and so sneakily. Right? Sometimes it's very subtle and you don't even notice when you've had this shift or when something's happened where you're back in those energies of stress, worry, fear, or whatever, right? Lack, for example. And so, yes, you have to be super diligent. You have to be almost like radical in your willingness to patrol or be conscious, be aware of every thought that pops up into your mind. And this is something I heard a lot of, last year and throughout the past 2-3 years was, you have to be diligent. You have to watch every single, and I shouldn't put it that way because that's not entirely true, but I always thought, no, I'm doing okay. Like I'm doing enough. And it's not that I wasn't doing enough at that time, but right now I am shifting into, as I said, this more radical state of I have no more space. I have no more energy to give to that old programming. Like I'm done. And so to set those energetic boundaries takes it takes a lot to remain in that state of being. Okay, so that's where the diligence comes in. Because if you say, I'm done with this, like I'm done with this lack mindset, I'm done with these limiting beliefs, I'm done with all of that old programming, all of that old stuff that I have been just carrying and just being, whether it be consciously or unconsciously throughout my entire life, I'm done with that, then you are the one who has to then not allow any of that old stuff back in. And here's the thing, that stuff is going to pop back in. It's this line of being aware when those thoughts and those things pop back into your awareness, or they try to kind of suck you back in or pull you back down or pull you backwards. You have to be aware of when that's happening and be able to call that out when it happens, but not let yourself get sucked back into it. Does that make sense? Sometimes it's, excuse me, hard to put the earth human words to, I mean, again, if you listen to the podcast, you know this, I've said this so many times. It's hard to put words sometimes to what I'm trying to say or explain, but hopefully you get this. Hopefully this makes sense. If you're not quite there yet, like if you're not at the point where you are really purging all of that stuff, you are ready to let all of that go, that's okay, right? You are where you are at this point in time, and that's where you're supposed to be. As long as you're doing your best, you're having some sort of, forward momentum or forward motion, doing even little things for yourself, right? And just a reminder as well, we need that integration time. So if you're kind of in like a rest period, if you're in like a break, that's wonderful too, because we all need that time to allow those changes to integrate, and then you can dive into the next thing, right? Or continue on with whatever you're working on. Another way that Phil put it is he talked about these thoughts as like he called them clickbait thoughts. So they're very tempting and they look really great, but when you click on them, you get sucked back into that energy, into those old frequencies, those lower vibrations that you have worked to bring yourself out of, right? So those clickbait thoughts are not conducive. They are not supportive to what you are trying to do, to the work that you have put in. And maybe I've talked about this in the past, but I'm sure I have talked about it in the past. I'm sure I've posted about it on social media as well. But when you are doing this work, you will be presented with, I used to call them tests, and I know some people call them tests, but I've kind of reframed my thinking a little bit, where you will be quote unquote tested, but how I think of it now is you will be presented with situations that will create space for you to be who you say you are, or to be or to embody the energies that you want to be and that you want to put forth in the world. So you'll have these situations, and this is a perfect example, is these thoughts popping back in. So I can do the meditation, I can do the journaling, I can do the things and set those energetic boundaries where I'm firm with myself, and I make it clear that no, I have no more space, I have no more energy, I have no more attention to give to these old programs, these old things, right? But then when those thoughts pop back in, those clickbait thoughts pop back up, am I going to subscribe to them? Am I going to click on that link, so to speak, to open that energy back up? Or am I going to not click on them? Am I going to not resubscribe to those old ways of thinking? So you have time after time after time, you are presented with these situations which are opportunities to be who you want to be, to embody your higher self. And even if you're not kind of on that wavelength of higher self, or you're not even sure what that means, or you're just not there, that's fine. Like pull from this however it applies to you, however it resonates for you. Maybe you're not working so much consciously in the world of like energy, even though by now you know that everything is energy, right? Frequency, vibration. Maybe you're not quite, you know, in that world so deeply. Maybe you're still more in the physical. That's fine. Again, take what you need, or just absorb what you need from this conversation. So will you continue to subscribe to those old ways of thinking, those old issues of the magazine, right? Will you keep clicking on the clickbait thoughts? Or do you think you can start to crack down on those thoughts and not let yourself just run amok and be all over the place with where you are? Because when you're doing that, you are not being clear with yourself and with the universe about who you are and who you want to be, right? Like if you have this, like, and I have been guilty of this as recently as a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. And this is why I share with you guys, because I go through these things too. I experience these things too, because I'm not special. I'm not some magical, all-knowing, ethereal being, like whatever. I'm a person. I'm a human. I go through these things. I experience them too. That's why I feel comfortable sharing with you, because I have experienced the ins and outs. But when you are being wishy-washy with, so maybe you're saying one thing, but your actions are saying another thing, right? So again, I can get into the energy. I can, as I'm journaling, for example, or as I'm meditating, I can tap into that energy of who I truly am, right? That embodiment of higher self, that embodiment of multi-dimensional self, and the integration of that self with the physical self that's here on earth, because that's really fun. I have no trouble getting there, but with the other 23 hours of my day, I have to be that. And if I'm journaling about one thing, but then with the rest of my day, I'm clicking on these clickbait thoughts, right? Or I'm letting these old programs, these old thoughts continue to rule over me and have power over me. Like, do you see the polar, like, do you see the I don't know what the word is, the confusion? Maybe you can't have all of these different energies in your mind, in your body, in your energetic self, your spiritual self, your emotional body, right? All of those things, you have to do the work to be on the same wavelength, to rein all of that in, to pull all of that together, and to be that energy that you want to start seeing show up in your physical reality. So this comes back to being diligent. You have to be diligent with those thoughts, because you can't be trying to embody one energy but still be subscribing to the old shit. Because what do you think is going to keep showing up? More of the old shit. And there's nothing wrong with struggling with this. There's nothing wrong with this taking a long time, because sometimes it does take a long time. Sometimes you might feel like you don't have the energy on any given day to be super diligent with yourself. Be gentle with yourself, okay? Because especially if you're new to this, especially if you aren't super deep into this work for yourself yet, you have to be patient with yourself. And something else that I have been thinking about that I'm going to talk about quick before I wrap things up here is, I personally, I have had times where I've been very frustrated because I feel like I am working on the same things over and over and over and over again. And it's just like, okay, like how much more work and consciousness could this possibly need? But here's the thing that I realized, or maybe I saw someone share something like this. I can't even remember if this came from me or from someone else. But here's how you can look at this. Every time you are doing the work, right? Every time you are peeling away a layer on a certain wound, for example. So I'll use myself. I have a core wound. One of my core wounds is self-worth. So I have been working on this self-worth wound and looking at where in my life it has been the driving force, how it has snuck up on me, and just where it like inserts itself in my daily life. And so that's something that I have been working on, okay? So every time I have an awareness, every time I have a realization of, oh, that's why I made that choice when I was 20 years old or whatever, right? Every time that happens, you peel away a layer of that wound. And then you peel away a layer, but you also upgrade your own state of vibration. So you upgrade in frequency. So where you are functioning from energetically, right? And on that vibrational level, you are upgrading yourself. So now you are looking at that wound from a fresh perspective and a fresh new point of consciousness. Does that make sense? So then you can work on the next layer of your wound. And now that even as I'm talking about this, it's not even necessarily the peeling away of the layers. It's just seeing that wound through a new filter, through a filter of a higher state of being, a higher point of consciousness, like I said. So now you can look at that wound with new eyes, and that's why it can feel like you're working on the same thing over and over and over again, because as you work to get to the root to heal those wounds, or whatever words you want to use, right? You keep upgrading, you keep up leveling, you keep ascending within your own energy field. And throughout these layers of consciousness, then you can see things in a new, different way. Does that make sense? I feel like I repeat myself a lot, and I've probably said that before as well, but sometimes I don't really know if I'm getting my point across. That's why I love doing things like live streams and live Zooms, because then I can have people there with me who can ask questions if you need clarity. But hopefully that makes sense. So if you've been getting frustrated with yourself, or you're feeling like you're not doing enough, or just like, oh my God, like how much longer could I possibly have to work on this before something shifts? Keep in mind that things are shifting. It's just they're shifting on the invisible levels first. before you'll start to see those shifts here in the physical, right? Even in like the mental, emotional levels or states of being. So things shift in the energetic realm first every time. And you guys know this. If podcast listeners, you know this because I've said this so many times. Every time you take an action step, every time you do a little bit of the work, whatever that might look like for you, you're creating those ripples, you're creating those waves, you're creating those changes on a quantum level, right? An energetic level first. And then as you keep taking that consistent action, then those changes will start to ripple back to you and show up in the physical. Right? So it's almost like, those like toy cars, and you pull them back and then you let them go. That's kind of like the energy of how I think of this is as you send something out there, as you take an action step, as you do the work, you are almost like, it's almost the same type of action as when you pull that toy car backwards, and then when you let go, so AKA when you let go is when the universe starts to reflect those things back to you and send those things to you here in the physical. So it's like this back and forth, right? And this is why it takes consistent action. Commit to yourself, right? Like, have you been committing to yourself? I was so guilty like a few years ago, really up until the beginning of 2020. Like I'd be like, yes, I'm gung-ho, I'm gonna do this and this and this, and then I would just give up. Like I was famous with myself for doing that. That was a huge story I had for myself. So have you been the same? Have you been like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll do this, or start journaling, or start meditating, or start working out, or going to the gym, or eating healthy, or whatever, right? Because it applies to everything. Have you been doing that? Have you been stuck in that loop, that cycle? Like, are you ready to love yourself enough to make the long-lasting changes? Can you love yourself enough to commit and do the consistent work that is required to create that long-lasting change? Because I've done a whole episode on this. You can't hate yourself into changing, right? Because if you could do that, we would all just be changing constantly. It would be so easy. But when you're coming from that space, of I hate my body, so I'm going to work out and I'm going to eat differently, and so that then my body will look good, or I'll feel good in my body. Has that worked for you? And that's just one example, right? You can't hate yourself into a state of loving yourself. You have to love yourself enough to love yourself, which maybe sounds silly, but that's how it works. You have to love yourself enough to be committed to making these changes. So are you ready? Even if you're not ready, are you willing to make one small change? Are you willing to do one small thing for yourself every day? That can then lead up to, hey, I can do this for myself. And you can see how good it feels to do that for yourself. Because it's up to you. It's not up to anybody else. Nobody else is responsible for you and for your healing and for your changes. Nobody is going to fix you. You can seek out mentors and guides and people to help you along the way, but you are with you at the end of the day. So are you living with integrity with yourself? Are you proud and happy and excited about where and how you have been spending your energy and your attention? Just some things to consider. I have round 2 opening up on October 25th, which is this coming Monday, I think, or Tuesday, of returning within. This is going to be all about learning how to re-access and re-tap into that inner peace. We are going to get into consciousness expanding conversations. We are going to be doing a weekly quantum energy healing retreat. It's a 4-week program, workshop, journey, whatever you want to call it, whatever name or title you want to give it. So we'll have a weekly expansion conversation. We'll have a weekly energy healing session / retreat. You're going to get a treasure trove of self-healing tools and action steps and real things that you can use in your daily life to help yourself along your journey. A recommended reading list, a self-healing playlist on Spotify. There's a couple other things that are in there as well. So if you're ready to learn, to dive in, visit my website. I'll put the link where you can find it, and you can see all of the details, the entire outline of the workshop, week to week, what we will be focusing on. And I would love to have you there. I would love for you to join me, because I feel very passionate isn't the right word, because I personally don't really resonate with that word, but something along the lines of that. I feel very excited and honored to have done this work for myself and to have that personal experience so that I can then bring it to you and be here to help and encourage and to create a container of space and energy where you can come and be and learn with no judgment. It just lights me up and I get so excited about it. So go check out the details, contact me, email me to register, and I hope to see you there. I truly, truly do. So I'm going to leave it at this for today. If you have any questions, you have any thoughts, if you have any comments, let me know. My DMs are always open. My email is always open. And you can get in touch with me. I'm accessible. I'm available. I have been trying to cut back on social media, and I have been trying for a long time. You guys have heard me talk about this. So I may not answer right away, but I will answer. So I am so grateful for you for being here. I love you so much. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are taking care of yourself. I hope you are taking care of your nervous system, your mental health, everything. And I will see you next time.